In this half hour, we take a look at the race for Texas 19. Joining me in studio, Colonel Michael Bob Starr, running for Congress. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning, Chad. Thanks for having me back. Appreciate the chance to talk to you again.
Absolutely. You've been crisscrossing the district, I hear.
That's fact. That is a fact. Put a lot of miles on the car. There's a lot of district to cover.
What are you hearing from folks out there who are looking at this race and finally seeing this race heat up?
Well, I'm hearing one message loud and clear, and I'm hearing from every single person I talk to, from one end of the district to the other, no matter what they do, and that is people are sick and tired of politicians, tired of sending people to D.C. that are more interested in running for re-election and staying in D.C. than in making good things happen for this district.
How do you convince them that you're different? You're not anyone who knows your history knows that you're not a lifelong politician. But I think the fear for a lot of voters out there is that, okay, you say you're not a politician, but once you get to Washington, D.C., Washington does change some people. So how do you convince people that you're different?
Well, not only am I not a politician and not having ever run for public office before, I have fought with the federal bureaucracy. I've made things happen in D.C., and I've been there. I've been in that environment, and I know how poisonous and seductive it can be. And so one of the things I'll tell you for sure is I am not going to live in D.C. My home is in West Texas. I will go to D.C. to do my job, but I am coming back here, and I'm going to spend as much time as possible in the district.
Is that something that's important not only to you but to the voters out there, that they see their elected official?
I think absolutely. Definitely.
Well, and I think that, with the current state rep, one of the criticisms that I've heard is that there's not enough town hall meetings. There's not enough interaction between the congressman and the voters in this district. How do you rectify that situation? Do you think you have to make even a larger attempt at rectifying that situation? Well,
I think one of the things I was known for as the commander of Dice Air Force Base was being accessible to my airmen, and I leveraged technology to do that, and I devoted time to doing that. I held not only physical town halls, but we would do Facebook town halls. I would engage airmen where they are, and I will engage this district and the people of this district where they are.
How much time have you been able to spend in the Lubbock area? Because, it's with 9 candidates running, you're not from this immediate area. You're not from Lubbock. You're in Abilene. I would imagine that your name ID in Abilene much larger than it would be up here in the Lubbock area. So how much time have you been able to dedicate to being in Lubbock?
Now, I've been here since the day I announced. I have been in Lubbock for 2 or 3 days a week, every single week, and except for the week of the snowstorm, but and holiday week. But I've been here every single week, and I will continue that and hope to continue that actually for many years to come.
Is there a difference between the Lubbock voter and what their concerns are and the Abilene voter?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I think there are people in this race that will try to make this an Abilene versus Lubbock thing, and I'm not seeing it. I think the people in Lubbock care about the same thing that the people in Abilene care about. And, it's not limited to those two cities. We shouldn't forget there's a lot more to this district than just Abilene and Lubbock. And, I hear the same thing, the same concerns, whether you're in Lubbock, Abilene, Big Spring, Snyder, Sweetwater, Graham, Seminole, Plainview. No matter where you go in this district, I think people are concerned about the same things. They have the same outlook, and they hold the same values. And that's one of the things that makes this district great.
Well, what do you think when it comes to the issue of the national debt? This is an issue that I don't think gets enough play, especially on the presidential level when you hear the guys debate in the presidential level, but really anywhere else. You may have a candidate who mentions it every now and then, but our national debt is surging. And CBO earlier this week said, hey, the next 10 years, it's going to get even worse if we don't do something about it. So what is your plan, or what do you want to do to tackle the national debt in Washington? Yeah,
so if I had a plan for eliminating the national debt, I would be selling that to as many candidates as I could, and I wouldn't be running for office myself. But I appreciate you phrasing it in terms of tackling it, because I think that's what has to be done, and we have to get serious about it. And so I think I would start with the agencies that are not adding value, in fact, that are dragging the productivity of the American people down, that are dragging down the productivity of farmers and ranchers, that are dragging down the ability of teachers to teach. And I'm talking, and EPA, I'm looking at you, Bureau of Land Management, I'm looking at you. All these areas where the federal government has overreached and is intruding on our lives, I would tackle not only the authority for those agencies to do that, I would tackle their funding and choke them off at the source. And so I think that's where it starts.
So you're talking about eliminating some of those agencies?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, things that aren't adding value, the Department of Education, I mean, educational grants are one thing. And obviously a lot of our local school districts rely on federal grants. But I'm not convinced you need this great big bureaucracy, federal bureaucracy, to administer those grants and then administer the rules that come along with that money. So I think Department of Education is another area where we could look to decrease the federal spending.
Before we take the break, I want to get your position or your thoughts on something that we hear in the national debates for president. And you hear the issue of national defense and funding for our military. Do you believe funding is too high, too low, or is it right where it needs to be?
So here's what, it's not just a matter of what I believe, it's what I know. I know that the Air Force we have right now is the oldest, smallest Air Force we have ever had as a nation. In fact, we're still flying the B-52. If we had flown the B-17, a World War II bomber, as long as we have flown the B-52, we would have used B-17s in Desert Storm. So you ask me if we're spending enough. We're not investing enough, for sure, in our military hardware and our military capability, not just the Air Force, but that applies to all the services.
Visiting with Colonel Michael Bob Starr in studio. We'll take the break when we come back. Another segment with Colonel Starr. We'll have all the way up to 10 o'clock with Colonel Starr in studio. When we come back, we'll get into some more domestic issues and also covering some issues that came up in the Faith and Family Forum as well. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. Colonel Michael Bob Starr running for Congress here in Texas 19. During the Faith and Family Forum, it was a very interesting debate, and I think there were forum, and I think there were a lot of different moments during that forum. One of those that myself and when Carl Tepper was in the next day, we discussed was your answer, and Carl Tepper, he loved it. He thought it was very genuine, and I thought it was as well. And it was the question to you about funding for Dias Air Force Base, but it was attached to a bill that included funding for Planned Parenthood. And it was one of those where you had to take a second. Everyone else on stage, they went right for, no, I wouldn't vote for it. No, I wouldn't vote for it. No, I wouldn't vote for it. When Carl Tepper got to you, he kind of switched it up a little bit from Farm Bill to Dias Air Force Base. Right. Take us through that and why the hesitation on that answer.
No, I appreciate you asking. And let me start by saying that I am strongly committed to pro-life policies. And if you were there, so you heard the story, you know why I feel that way. This is not a position that I get fed to me by a consultant. This is not something that I read from talking points for. I am pro-life because of my personal experience, and I had the opportunity at that debate to introduce the crowd to my son. And again, the story is that when my wife was 20 weeks pregnant with our first son, we had an ultrasound, and the doctor diagnosed him with a cleft lip and palate and said that he probably had Down syndrome. Now, we were in Boston at the time, and Boston values are not West Texas values, which is not surprising. But what was surprising was the next appointment we had. And we were told, hey, the doctor wants to see you now, so go to do the next appointment. At that appointment, it was the doctor telling us about the virtues and benefits of having an abortion. We were shocked. We left that appointment. We went to our church to spend time with each other, to not to decide how to respond in terms of the pregnancy, but to decide how to respond in terms of facing the doctors. We named our son Matthew right then because Matthew means a gift from God. And if we were going to have any more conversations about abortion with the doctors in Boston, that conversation would start with us introducing him to our son and by name and explaining why we had named him that. So here's what I know for sure. 20 weeks in the womb, my son had a face. And not only did he have a face, it was a face that was different from everyone else's. And he was a person. And his life began at conception. And the question in the debate that you brought up was, as you mentioned, a question that tied the funding of Planned Parenthood to the Farm Bill. And I think that when you are faced with legislation that is pitting the preservation of life against livelihood, I think that that's a relatively easy decision. In fact, there's no relatively about it. That is a legislation where you stand for life. I certainly will stand for life. When it got to me, and Carl Tepper, as you mentioned, changed it to a measure that would defund Planned Parenthood, but also defund Dyess Air Force Base. Now that became more than life versus livelihood. I believe that having a strong national defense saves lives. I have been in the cockpit of a B-1 and saved soldiers and Marines' lives with an airplane that had DY on the tail, an airplane from Dyess Air Force Base, using techniques and tactics that I learned and practiced in the skies over West Texas while assigned to Dyess Air Force Base. So now it was a simultaneously a measure that would put lives at risk while saving some lives. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a question that ought to cause you to pause.
Right. And is that one that you, if ever presented, and I don't know how feasible that would be to connect those two, but if it was ever presented that way, is that something where you go to the voters and you listen to the voters, you travel the district, you listen to them, or is this more of you going into an office somewhere and basically praying and hoping for an answer?
No, I think that you have to do both. I mean, I think that you can't face a significant decision like that without going to your God. At least I certainly will never have and never will face a significant a decision that's as significant as that and try to come up with an answer on my own, human knowledge alone. I will seek wisdom from the Lord, and I will also seek where the people are. I mean, I think that's important. Not necessarily decisive or directive, but it's important to know and to take that into account too. But I will always fight for life. So
since the debate and the question's been out there, what do you think you would do, or how would you tackle that issue if it was tied together?
Well, I think you have to fight to decouple them first. I mean, this is one of the things that's wrong with politics to begin with is these situations being presented in terms where you have to compromise. But I still think that it would depend too much. I mean, it's a hypothetical, and it's a hypothetical without enough information to make an informed decision about it. So the question is, are you defunding Planned Parenthood in a way that actually stops abortions, or are you defunding it in a way that allows abortions to continue to take place under some other agency or some other means? Are you defunding the mission at Dyess Air Force Base, or are you transferring that mission somewhere else? So I will always fight for life, and I'll always fight to make sure that we are able to make decisions in a way that makes sense, not by tying unrelated issues together.
We have one more break that we have to take. When we come back, we've got more domestic issues to get into, including immigration and much more. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO, Colonel Michael Bob Starr in studio. We'll be right back. Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO, Colonel Michael Bob Starr in studio running for Texas 19. Let's talk about immigration first in this final segment. Mm-hmm. If the next president comes to you and says, okay, I want to put you in charge of coming up with an immigration, how to tackle the issue of immigration in the United States, what's some advice you give to the president on how to tackle immigration and the influx of illegal immigrants that we are seeing come across the border?
I'd say, Mr. President, the first thing we need to do about immigration is secure our border. And in all the campaigns that I've served in overseas, securing a border has been an essential part of that. And the reason is because you can't have freedom without security. If we don't secure the border, then we undermine the very value that legitimate immigrants who are come here seeking freedom, and we undermine the value that they're coming here to achieve. So we have to start with securing the border, and it has to be more than just a wall. A wall hasn't been an adequate way of defending territory since about the Middle Ages. A wall can be a part of it, but we also need more people, we need more boots on the ground, and we need to do a better job of leveraging military tools and technologies to make that border secure. Obama's made our southern border a welcome mat, and it's a gateway for terrorists and criminals. And despite the efforts of Texas to strengthen the Texas border, the fact is this is a federal responsibility. I've talked with Sheriff Kelly Rowe here in Lubbock County, and I've seen the pictures and the effects that drug-related crime has had in this city. I've seen what the Sinaloa cartels and what the others have done to people who live in Lubbock, And Sheriff Rowe told me, it's as easy for them to get here as crossing over at Nogales and driving in I-40. This is not something, unfortunately, that Texas can solve on its own. It's something that we really need to tackle as a federal government.
When you mention it can't just be a wall, does that mean there would still be room for a wall across the entire border, but you have to add other things, or portions of the state or portions of the border get a fence or a wall, while other portions get more boots on the ground and other technology?
I think it would depend on the local security situation and what was needed.
Okay. When we get to the issue of foreign policy, and this is something that I think that you're keenly aware of, obviously, with your background, how does the U.S. take on the foreign policy challenges of ISIS right now?
Well, primarily by taking the fight to them. We need to fight terrorism where it originates and make our fight against terror an away game. We need to keep our home field safe for our families. And the sad thing is, I know what it's like to see anti-aircraft fire fired at your airplane. I know what that looks like from the cockpit. I know what rocket fire sounds like on the ground. And I know something that our president apparently doesn't, and that's that we're at war with radical Islamic extremists, and we're allowing them to dictate the terms and the pace of this war. We're allowing them to choose the battlefields like Paris and targets in the United States. We need to make the next battlefield in this war on their turf.
We're going to have you back in studio, of course, before the election, but in the next 40 seconds or so, tell voters what they need to know about you.
Okay, I'll tell everybody that you're going to hear a lot of talk in this election. There are 9 candidates. You're going to hear a lot of talk about fighting terrorism. You're going to hear a lot of talk about securing the border. You're going to hear a lot of talk about cutting federal spending. I am the only one who has actually fought terrorism. I am the only one who's actually secured a border, and I have cut wasteful spending at Dyess Air Force Base. I'd appreciate your support and your vote on March 1st.
All right, Colonel Michael Bob Starr, as always, thank you very much. We'll visit with you down the road.
Thanks.